That's how we traveled in the year 1900. That's an open buggy. It doesn't have heating. It doesn't have air conditioning. That horse is pulling it along at 1% of the speed of sound. And that rutted dirt road turns into a quagmire of mud anytime it rains. That's a Boeing 707. Only 60 years later, it travels at 80% of the speed of sound. And we don't travel any faster today because commercial supersonic air travel turned out to be a bust. So I started wondering and pondering, could it be that the best years of American economic growth is behind us? And that leads to the suggestion maybe economic growth is almost over. Demographics, education, debt, and inequality. They're powerful enough to cut growth in half. So we need a lot of innovation to offset this decline. And here's my theme. Because of the headwinds, if innovation continues to be as powerful as it has been in the last 150 years, growth is cut in half. If innovation is less powerful, invents less great, wonderful things, then growth is going to be even lower than half of history.
Growth is not dead. 120 years ago, when American factories began to electrify their operations, igniting the second industrial revolution. The amazing thing is that productivity did not increase in those factories for 30 years. First wave of managers simply replaced their steam engines with electric motors, but they didn't redesign the factories to take advantage of electricity's flexibility. It fell to the next generation to invent new work processes, and then productivity soared, often doubling or even tripling in those factories. Technology is not destiny. We shape our destiny.
Now, the history that we've achieved is that we've grown at 2.0% per year over the whole period 1891 to 2007. And remember, it's been a little bit negative since 2007. But if growth slows down, instead of doubling our standard of living every generation, Americans in the future can't expect to be twice as well off as their parents, or even a quarter as well off as their parents.
I'm optimistic because the new machine age is digital, exponential, and combinatorial. When goods are digital, they can be replicated with perfect quality at nearly zero cost, and they can be delivered almost instantaneously. Welcome to the economics of abundance. But there's a subtler benefit to the digitization of the world. Measurement is the lifeblood of science and progress. In the age of big data, we can measure the world in ways we never could before.
What about the internal combustion engine, which was invented in 1879? In America, before the motor vehicle, transportation depended entirely on the urban horse. And here's an interesting ratio. Starting from zero in 1900, only 30 years later, the ratio of motor vehicles to the number of households in the United States reached 90% in just 30 years. And an amazing fact for techno-optimists is that in the first half of the 20th century, the rate of improvement of life expectancy was 3 times faster than it was in the second half of the 19th century.
Thirdly, the new machine age is combinatorial. The stagnationist view is that ideas get used up, like low-hanging fruit. But the reality is that each innovation creates building blocks for even more innovations. Here's an example. In just a matter of a few weeks, an undergraduate student of mine built an app that ultimately reached 1.3 million users. He was able to do that so easily because he built it on top of Facebook. And Facebook was built on top of the web, and that was built on top of the internet, and so on and so forth. Now, individually, digital, exponential, and combinatorial would each be game changers.
What about the electronic revolution? Here's an early computer. It's amazing. The mainframe computer was invented in 1942. By 1960, we had telephone bills, bank statements were being produced by computers. The earliest cell phones, the earliest personal computers, were invented in 1970s. The 1980s brought us Bill Gates, DOS, ATM machines to replace bank tellers, barcode scanning to cut down on labor in the retail sector. Fast forward through the 90s, we had the dot-com revolution and a temporary rise in productivity growth. But I'm now going to give you an experiment. You have to choose either option A or option B.
Technology is not destiny. Productivity is at an all-time high, but fewer people now have jobs. We have created more wealth in the past decade than ever, but for a majority of Americans, their income has fallen. Technology is racing ahead, but it's leaving more and more people behind. Today, we can take a routine job, codify it in a set of machine-readable instructions, and then replicate it 1,000,000 times.
The problem we face is that all these great inventions, we have to match them in the future. And my prediction that we're not going to match them brings us down from the original 2% growth down to 0.2, the fanciful curve that I drew you at the beginning.
The answer is not to try to slow down technology. Instead of racing against the machine, we need to learn to race with the machine. That is our grand challenge. The new machine age can be dated to a day 15 years ago when Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, played Deep Blue, a supercomputer.
So here we are back to the horse and buggy. I'd like to award an Oscar to the inventors of the 20th century, the people from Alexander Graham Bell to Thomas Edison to the Wright brothers. I'd like to call them all up here, and they're going to call back to you. Your challenge is, can you match what we achieved? Thank you.
A team of humans and computers working together could beat any computer or any human working alone. Racing with the machine beats racing against the machine. Technology is not destiny. We shape our destiny. Thank you.